there's a new announcement when it comes to Zebec, and I must say I find it pretty decent, and let me explain why. Because not too long ago, Zebec did announce that they commit to treasury management with Uphold Institutional. Now, Uphold, it's pretty famous. I mean, when I think about this space, sometimes I think about Uphold. Of course, I still think about, Coinbase, Binance, and whatnot, but then Uphold is pretty popular too. When I take a look at this, why do I think it's a little bit decent? Because it's not that this is necessarily anything exciting or really that interesting to me, but then I still find it unique nonetheless because when I take a look at something like Zebec, oftentimes people like to argue that, oh, they're not really doing much. Take a look at the Zebec cards. It's not really that popular and all this type of stuff. Now, I get some of the complaints because, of course, the Zebec cards, they're not necessarily the most popular. When I take a look at Zebec, also, it's not necessarily the most popular project out there either. But then at the same time, the fact that they're even caring about stuff like this, I do find it pretty unique. I find it pretty decent nonetheless because at least they care about these type of things, right? There's a bunch of projects out there which seem like they don't really care about the project in terms of fundamentals. Now, when it comes to this, am I saying that projects that are like that sometimes may have a lot of fans, may have still a good following? I've seen that in some cases. But then, if I was believing in a project that didn't really care about the fundamentals, that didn't really care about really anything, it just gives me a little bit of I would say a vibe where I just kind of think that the project really isn't being taken that seriously. Maybe, who knows? It just kind of feels like in those cases, the project is kind of being treated as a part-time thing. And maybe it is to some, projects out there, who knows? But then at the same time, I like Zebec because I feel like it's being taken seriously. If a project wasn't taken seriously, would they want to be acquiring other things? Like, for instance, acquiring GateKnox, acquiring Science Card UK to be focused quite essentially on other markets, right? Science Card UK being focused on education, through that, GateKnox being focused on compliance. So really, that just gives me the vibe that it's being taken seriously. And also stuff like this, I mean, just think about this. If let's say Zebec didn't do this, do I think 99% of the people that I know about Zebec would care? No, I mean, they probably wouldn't care because I think that they probably would have thought that, who's even thinking about this, right? Maybe they didn't even think about it. Even I didn't think about this. I didn't really care. But then the fact that they're even kind of, showcasing things that some people out there might not even be thinking about, this is kind of the mindset that I think Zebec has because let's say also Zebec never acquired GateKnox or Science Card UK, I would still be bullish on it. I was bullish on it before it did all that, right? So then at the same time, I just like how they're adding quite essentially the analogy I would put, like more icing on the cake, Sometimes the icing is already okay, but then my favorite part of the cake is the icing. So if let's say there's more of that, I don't mind. This is just my point of view. And what I like about Zebec is that they're treating this project more so as like kind of a marathon, it feels like to me. And this kind of aligns with my mindset a little bit because when I'm dollar cost averaging, I treat it like a marathon. I don't treat it like a sprint because this is just my mindset. And again, I think Zebec kind of has that as well because if Zebec is doing stuff like this, I think it kind of showcases that they care about the long term. Because think about it, right? Other projects out there, they would rather advertise, let's say on a billboard, or they want to advertise through a celebrity or an athlete. But then Zebec acquired GateKnox, they acquired Science Card UK. Also on top of that, they're even thinking about this type of stuff, right? Again, Zebec committing to treasury management with Uphold Institutional. I find all of this just very intriguing to me. But really, the way you take a look at it is that when it comes to Zebec, people like to say that, oh, being focused on RWAs is not a good thing, hypothetically. Well, I disagree with that because if we take a look at RWAs, real world assets, some projects out there that are, pretty popular, like for instance, Ondo, that's heavily focused on RWAs. And I recently talked about, news regarding RWAs when it comes to Hedera. Feel free to check that video out as well, by the way, if you do want to watch a video on Hedera. But I'm just saying, I find that also pretty cool how now even like some of the more established projects out there, they're kind of beginning to showcase RWAs a little bit. And I like this when it comes to Zebec because when I was first believing in Zebec, I felt like RWAs maybe weren't really considered that cool or interesting, but as of right now, I'm beginning to see this kind of trend where RWAs are beginning to be viewed as maybe in a better regard as to what it was before. Not to mention, when I take a look at RWA tokenization, right? Or let's say, let me use an example, RWA tokens. They're digital representations of physical assets on the blockchain. It's pretty interesting in my opinion. I mean, like for instance, these market sectors, or should I say like it can be used for market sectors such as real estate, art, we take a look at bonds, stocks, etc., right? There's a bunch more, but I'm just listing a few here. But I'm just saying, I just find that pretty interesting. And if we take a look at Zebec's focused on AI-based PayFi, you know, if we take a look at the AI market, for instance, that is predicted to be worth nearly $2 trillion by 2030, according to Grandview Research. So that's pretty massive. If we take a look at the payments market, it's already valued at over $2 trillion currently. So being focused on AI-based PayFi, again, right? AI-based payment finance, I don't see why that's such a bad thing. So overall, I do like Zebec, and I think it kind of showcases the traits in which I look for usually when it comes to a project, because usually I look for a project that's fundamentally amazing given the market sector that it's in, because of course I still believe in meme coins, but then there's a different way that I evaluate that in terms of the fundamentals. Like for instance, I take a look at the unique factor, I take a look at the community, I take a look at the exchange listings. That's how I would analyze, fundamentally when it comes to a meme coin. But when it comes to a project like this that's more so utility driven, I think there are some aspects borrowed from how I kind of analyze meme coins, but then it's a little bit different because what I look for when it comes to a project that is focused on amazing fundamentals, that is kind of the long-term mindset, I think, of the team. And I think I do see that here. I like the updates. Also on top of that, I like the exchange listings. When it comes to ZBCN, it's not necessarily the best in my opinion, but I think it's pretty decent. Not to mention, I think the community is also passionate. So I think this kind of combines a best of maybe both worlds type of scenario, because usually when I think about a project that has a very passionate community, it's typically these meme coins. But then when it comes to, something like Zebec, it kind of has that passion when it comes to the community that I see, but then it's not a meme coin, right? So then it's kind of like, again, a best of both worlds type of scenario, the way I take a look at it. But even besides that point, let's say ZBCN maybe were to go to the price of 10 cents. I get it. As of right now, the price hasn't really been doing much. And when people showcase, oh, take a look at what, HBAR is doing. Take a look at, XLM. Take a look at, Turbo. Take a look at some other meme coins. I'm totally aware of this. But sometimes these projects, they kind of move at their own pace, even those that are in the same sector. And I want to showcase Zebec as a prime example of this. I believe in XCN and ZBCN pretty much at around the same time, right? But then guess what happened? XCN pumped first before ZBCN. But then when XCN had a pullback, ZBCN actually had its moment to, rise. Now, of course, there's a pullback also XCN, but I'm saying it was kind of like a different time, even though they're in the same market. So again, in my opinion, some other projects out there, they may have their time to shine as of right now a little bit, because I can't really say it's a fully fledged type of altcoin season. But then at the same time, these projects sometimes, they kind of do it at their own pace. They do it at a moment, in some cases, in which I would least expect them to do so. So when it comes to ZBCN, I wouldn't say it's like, oh, I don't want to believe in it, because again, I've understood that, again, these type of projects, they do sometimes tend to, have its run at different times. So I'm just going to stay patient, because I am not able to predict the exact moment in time, something like ZBCN is going to do well, because I didn't do that in the beginning, and I'm not going to be able to do that moving forward, because I cannot tell the future. But in the meantime, I'm just going to stay patient, hold, and I just wait. But in the meantime as well, I do want to take a look at the announcements. I do want to take a look at the updates, and I want to take a look at the fundamentals when it comes to Zebec. And I like what I'm seeing. So again, I'm just going to stay patient. In a moment in which maybe it does do well, and in a moment maybe altcoins do have that fully fledged type of altcoin season, I just want to be prepared. So I'm going to be holding, waiting, and that's pretty much it. It's a patience game for me. I get it, it's a little bit boring. Some of my friends out there, they're saying, oh, it's like watching paint dry. Well, that's debatable, because at least when it comes to waiting for, these projects, I can at least do other activities, right? Like go to the park, hang out, at least do things, right? Instead of just watching it. But I'm just saying, this is the way to take a look at it as a patience game. So I'm going to be waiting, and that's pretty much it. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'll greatly appreciate it. As Willie the Captain, and I'll catch you all in the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.